Hello everybody! Welcome back to the second generation of Honkai Star Rail characters. Ruan Mei is here, and it's time to talk about her. Today, we're going to go over everything you need to build your own Ruan Mei and how you can kit her out with her best relics, light cones, talents, etc. We're going to talk about all that here and more today. So without further ado, let's get in to today's video. Now the first thing I want to discuss is Ruan Mei's kit, because she has probably one of my favorite kits in the entire game, if not maybe my favorite. And it's what some people are referring to as the second generation of Honkai characters. She opens up so many new avenues for team comps, and we're going to talk about that all here today. So first off, her basic attack, very simple basic attack. When you're leveling up your talents, I do not recommend leveling up her basic attack. There is no reason to. The times you're going to be using this are few and far in between. Next up, Ruan Mei's skill. After using her skill, Ruan Mei is going to gain an effect called Overturn, lasting for 3 turns. This duration decreases by 1 at the start of each turn. Whenever Ruan Mei has Overturn, all of your allies on the field have increased damage by 32% and have their weakness break efficiency increased by an additional 50%. Now this gets even better. Later on, when you get one of her bonus abilities, you're going to increase that already high number by an additional 10% of Ruan Mei's break effect that exceeds 120% is now added on to that skill. Additionally, she is going to increase all allies' damage by an additional 6%, up to a maximum of 36%. To make full use of this bonus ability, you are going to want to aim for 180% break effect, which is quite steep, but it is very possible with all of Ruan Mei's stat bonuses coming from her traces and a couple relics, which we will get into more later. Now you'll notice when I was talking about her skill, I noted that she scales with break effect. That is because Ruan Mei is a unique character in the sense is that she doesn't really scale with normal stats like HP, defense, or attack. She instead scales with break effect, which is unique from every other character in the game. The only 2 stats you really want on her are break effect, speed, and then you can maybe get some HP and defense for a little bit of tanking. So in that sense, she's different from every other character in the game. She really can't make use of crit stats the same way that every other character can. And that's even more of an exaggeration when we talk about her talent. Her talent increases all the characters on the field speed by 10%, excluding Ruan Mei herself. And then additionally, whenever one of our allies breaks a weakness, Ruan Mei is going to deal an additional 120% of her ice break damage to that enemy. To summarize that in a few words, huge speed buff plus additional damage from your break effect. Very simple ability, but very useful. Next up, her technique, which you can use to enter battle. After using Ruan Mei's technique, you're going to gain an effect called Silken Serenade. At the start of the next battle, automatically you're going to trigger the skill for 1 time without consuming any skill points. You just immediately get her skill at the very start of battle. Very useful technique there. Additionally, in the simulated universe, if you are to use this there, this looks like a lot of text, but to simplify this into a few words, it's going to reduce the toughness of the enemy and also deal additional damage equal to Ruan Mei's ice break damage. Pretty simple stuff. Another useful ability just allows that skill to get up right away at the start of battle, already applying that overturn to the enemy. And the last thing to touch on in the kit section is going to be her ultimate. Ruan Mei's ultimate deploys a field that lasts for 2 turns. The field's duration is decreased by 1 at the start of each turn. While inside the field, all allies gain res penetration increase by 20%, and their attacks now apply an effect titled Thanto Plume Rebloom. Yeah, that's a word. Essentially, what this effect does is absolutely insane. Basically, just whenever we weakness break the enemy, whenever the enemy's next turn is after a weakness break, this effect is going to apply and extend the weakness break into another turn, delaying their action by an amount equal to 20% of Ruan Mei's break effect, plus 10% and dealing equal to 50% of Ruan Mei's ice break damage. Incredible ability, probably my favorite part of her whole kit. Allows you to set up a bunch of different moves to just do huge damage, delay enemy turns. I mean, Ruan Mei really does it all. Yeah, you're starting to see why she is probably the best Harmony character in the entire game. A broken kit, but a very simple one, and her kit makes it so much easier to build her. So let's talk about Ruan Mei's light cones. Now, we've already kind of touched on the stats you want for Ruan Mei, and one of those is break effect. I feel like I've said that like 20 times now, but that's really everything her kit revolves around. And her signature gives you an extra 60% break effect, which almost gets you up to the amount you need. You get about 55 to 60% from her traces alone, plus an additional 60% from her light cone. That brings you to 120 break effect. You would only need an extra additional 60% from your relics alone, and then you would almost be there. Also, the light cone has a couple cool additional effects, like increasing your allies' damage after you use your ultimate. If your break effect exceeds 150, you're going to recover a skill point, and at the start of each wave, you're going to regenerate 10 energy for all of your allies. Crazy good light cone, definitely the best in slot for Ruan Mei, but obviously not everybody is going to have that light cone. We can't all be whales, and I perfectly well understand that because I probably won't get her light cone either. So let's talk about some other ones. Her best in slot for free-to-plays is going to be Memories of the Past. This has the potential to get a 56% break effect increase at max superimposition level, which is almost akin to what her S1 light cone can give you by itself. Additionally, it also regenerates 8 energy, just an overall solid light cone for Ruan Mei, and probably going to be your best option if you are one of those free-to-play players. If you just so happen to not have Memories of the Past, another weirdly good option is actually Meshing Cogs. After the wearer is attacked by an enemy, you just regain 4 energy. It can't be repeated multiple times on one turn, but it can happen on different cycles, and having Ruan Mei's burst up constantly is another very important part of her kit, so Meshing Cogs can actually work really well. Addressing some of the other 4 stars, Carve the Moon from the Battle Pass isn't overall that good for her. She doesn't really need the crit damage or the attack increases. Past and Future can be good situationally if you're trying to set up Ruan Mei and then another character to go directly after her to get the buff that you get from Kites from the Past. But usually I wouldn't recommend this option. Dance 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 is always a pretty solid light cone. No matter which Harmony character you're going to put this on, it's always pretty good. It just gives all your allies advanced forward actions after using an ultimate, and if you have Ruan Mei with good recharge and you're able to get up her ultimate constantly, this can be a decent light cone, but nowhere on the level of Memories of the Past. And then the last option you do have is Bronya's light cone, which is actually a decent light cone, and I'd say is maybe 3rd or 4th best. It gives you some energy regeneration, which can be very useful for Ruan Mei, and you recover a skill point whenever you use an ultimate. Just an all-around solid light cone for basically any Harmony unit, but definitely not the one I'd recommend using if you do have either Memories of the Past or her signature. And yeah, that's basically everything for her light cone. There is really only 2 options. If you have her signature, use it. If you don't have her signature, use Memories of the Past. That's simple. Anyways, let's move on to Relics. And honestly, Relics is kind of similar to light cones. It's pretty simple for Relics. There is really only 2 sets for you to choose between, and other than that, you really don't need to think about it. For her Cavern Relics, you have one option in Thief of the Shooting Meteor. This is going to give you 32% break effect, bring you even closer to that 180% margin that you're going to want to make full use of her kit. However, if you already meet the 180% requirement, I wouldn't recommend this set, but if you're still trying to get there, then this is a very strong set for Ruan Mei. Next up is the Messenger of Traveling Hackerspace. Both the 2-piece and the 4-piece can be good for her. Unless you're running the 4-piece on another Harmony character in the composition already, then the 4-piece can be very useful for Ruan Mei in trying to apply that to your whole team. Those are the only 2 4-pieces I would recommend. You have a couple options of mixing up 2 pieces, like a 2-piece speed and a 2-piece break effect. If you already meet the break effect that you need, you can mix in some 2-piece defense sets or some 2-piece HP sets. Then for planner ornaments, you have a couple options. Ones that I would strongly recommend would be Sprightly Von Walk, which increases your recharge by 5% and your action is advanced forward immediately upon entering battle. Ruan Mei needs energy quite a lot, and so this set, along with Penacony Land of Dreams, are probably her two best in slots because of the increase in energy regeneration rate by 5% on each of these sets. So those are the two I'd recommend for her. I'd lean towards Penacony over Sprightly just because I like Penacony's set effect more, increasing the damage by 10% for all allies on your team that are the same type as the rare. So if you pair Ruan Mei with a character like Jingliu, for example, then Jingliu gets a 10% increase in damage, and that could be very, very nice. Some additional sets that you can use if you just don't happen to have either of the energy regeneration sets could be a set like Talia, Kingdom of Banditry, because if you haven't met the break effect quota of 180%, then you can get even more break effect from here. You get 16% from the two-piece, and then if you reach 145 speed or higher, then you get an additional 20%, so a total of a 36% break effect buff, which would be really nice for Ruan Mei if you do want to go for that. Those are the only three sets I would choose between. If you need the break effect, go for Talia's, but if you already meet the requirement you need, I'd recommend Sprightly or Penacony. And that's everything for the planner ornaments. Now for the actual stats you want on these pieces, they are very, very simple. For your rope and your sphere, you're going to want break effect on the rope and HP percent or defense on the sphere. For the boots, you're going to want speed. And then lastly, for the body, you're going to want HP or defense, whichever one you didn't use on the orb. I would recommend prioritizing substats in this order. Start with break effect, then move on to speed, and then HP/defense. They are really interchangeable. Essentially any crit rate, damage, attack percent/attack are all gonna be mostly dead stats on your Ruan Mei. You want to go for mainly the four I listed before. And that is everything for Ruan Mei's relics. A very simple character to build, and can maybe use some of those relics that you might have not needed on other characters because they're generally bad relics, but now you have a character that you can actually use those bad relics on. Perfect. Moving on, let's take a quick moment to talk about Ruan Mei's Eidolons. Now, this obviously doesn't apply to everybody, but I still want to talk about this quickly because I know some of you guys may be wondering if it is worth it to go for maybe her Eidolon 1 or 2, or maybe you're just a Giga Whale and you'll go for Eidolon 6 regardless. Either way, let's talk about Ruan Mei's Eidolons. Eidolon 1 is a pretty significant buff. It essentially just ignores 20% of the enemy's defense whenever Ruan Mei has her ultimate up. Just a nice little boost there to all your character's damage. A very solid Eidolon. Eidolon 2 increases all your allies' attack by 40% when you're dealing damage to any enemy that is weakness broken. Now this one is very, very powerful because the enemy is going to be weakness broken about 90% of the battle. It depends on how good your rotations are. You essentially have what is boiled down to a 40% attack buff at all times for all your characters. Again, depending on how good your rotations are and how often you're able to break the enemy, keeping Ruan Mei's ultimate in mind. Very good Eidolon 2. Eidolon 3 and 5 are just ultimate talent, skill, and basic attack upgrades. Eidolon 4 increases Ruan Mei's break effect by 100% for 3 turns whenever the enemy target is already broken. I don't think this one is very significant considering how much break effect you need on Ruan Mei already. You're probably going to get most of it from relics, light cones, traces, and other means, so I don't think this Eidolon 4 is all that significant. However, her Eidolon 6 is very significant because it extends the ultimate duration by a single turn, and your talent break damage multiplier is increased by 200%. Now, the talent break multiplier isn't the biggest thing in the world, but the duration extension for the ultimate is pretty huge. Her ultimate already lasts for 2 turns. Adding an additional turn, bringing you up to 3 turns. Again, depending on your rotation, you could potentially have a 100% uptime on this ultimate. It's pretty insane, and if you do want the Eidolon 6, have fun spending $1,000. But anyways, that's everything to cover on her Eidolons. Now, the last thing I want to cover in today's guide video is going to be Ruan Mei's team comps. Now, Ruan Mei is a very universal character and can work with just about any character in the game, but some team comps I would recommend myself is the Nihility composition, where essentially you use 3 Nihility characters along with Ruan Mei. You could even throw a healer or a shielder in there as well. All Nihility characters scale really well with break effect and are really effective at weakness breaking enemies, which works well with Ruan Mei's kit. and just overall synergizes really well together. Another nice team I like that works with Ruan Mei is the Quantum Break team. Because of the way Quantum Break effect works, whenever you break a character with Quantum and then you deal any damage to them and they stack Entanglement on the enemy, with Ruan Mei, you can extend this entanglement so you can continuously get up big numbers of entanglement. Eventually, when the enemy is unbroken, you're going to deal a crap ton of damage. Another little pairing I like is Ruan Mei with Jing Liu. If you are using that Penacony set on Ruan Mei, pairing her with Jing Liu can be very useful for getting that additional ice damage boost. But for the most part, she can really work with just about any DPS in the game. So your team comps for Ruan Mei is gonna be just like any other team composition in the game, where you're gonna want a main DPS like Jing Yuan, for example, some sort of healer slash shielder like a Natasha, and then some sort of nihility secondary DPS like a Silver Wolf or a Topaz, and that's about the customary for all teams, and Ruan Mei fits that description rather well. But anyways, that's everything I want to cover on Ruan Mei. I hope this guide helped you guys out in building your own Ruan Mei, and hopefully your Ruan Mei can be absolutely cracked like mine is gonna be. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm gonna see you all in the next one. Peace.